Let's talk about a story that doesn't just sit in the minds, it haunts it. And fair warning, this story is heavy. It's unsettling. It's slow. It's quiet. And that's exactly what makes it terrifying, because this isn't a horror movie. There are no jump scares, no monsters hiding in the dark. The monster here is despair. And it doesn't scream, it whispers. You're listening to the Black Rabbit Podcast, the show where once you go down the rabbit hole, you don't crawl back out the same. These are the darkest, strangest, and most unsettling cases you'll ever hear. Viewer discretion is advised. These refugee children in Sweden suffer from mysterious and devastating condition. These children stop talking, they stop eating, they stop responding. Eventually, they stop moving. They fall into a state of, it's like a coma. Their eyes are closed, their bodies limp, and you have to feed them through feeding tubes that they carry. They carry from bed to bed. They're like porcelain dolls. Doctors call it Resignation Syndrome. And once you see it, you don't forget it. Resignation Syndrome is a condition almost exclusively found in refugee children in Sweden. Children who have fled war, witnessed violence, lost family, lived in constant fear, and endured years of uncertainty. But here's the part that makes your stomach drop. These children don't collapse during the trauma. They collapse after it, after they believe that they're finally safe, after they start to hope. And then that hope's taken away. Most of the children come from families seeking asylum. They arrive in Sweden believing that it's a place of safety, a place of protection, a place where children are allowed to be children again. But the asylum process is long, years long, and it's filled with letters written in cold writing language, letters that decide whether your family gets to stay or gets sent back to the place that you ran from. For adults, these letters are terrifying. For children, they're devastating, because children believe. They believe in fairness. They believe in protection. They believe adults won't let bad things happen, until one day they realize that the belief was a lie. With over 400 cases reported between 2003 and 2007, and then 583 reported between 2014 and 2019. That's a lot. That is a lot of children. The children, they don't scream, they don't cry, they don't fight. They just simply stop. Their bodies just stop. Doctors believe that resignation syndrome is the mind's final defense. When reality becomes unbearable, the brain shuts the body down. It's not to die, but to escape. And that's the most horrifying part. This isn't weakness, this is survival. One of the most devastating aspects of this is the parents losing their children while they're still alive. Because these children are still breathing, they're still warm, they're still alive, but they're gone. Parents bathe them, they carry them, they speak to them, they beg them, and nothing changes. Some parents whisper apologies, others pray, some blame themselves. Many believe they failed their children simply by trying to protect them. There is one family that is almost impossible to forget. A mother and father and their two young daughters. Their story doesn't begin in Sweden. It begins in a country that is ruled by violence, where fear was not a possibility, it was a daily. The government had come to their house one day and told them to shut off their internet. They're not allowed to be on the internet because the government didn't want them to know what's going on out there in the world. The government came back a year and a half later and said, we told you to shut off your internet. You didn't do that. So they took the father away. They arrested him. Then they beat him. They tortured him. They left him to die. The mom tried to find him for months, looking all over the place. She went to the jail to find him, but then she heard that he was in the hospital. So she ended up paying off some soldiers to take her to him. Then she paid them to help let him escape. Like turn their heads, they don't see nothing, and let him go, let him run. So he escaped, and he was hiding for a long time. He had to stay in hiding, not with mom and the daughters. He's somewhere else hiding. Then he ended up, after he got well enough, escaped over to Sweden. But in the meantime, mom, she was shadowed and followed by the government. And then one day, after taking her girls to school, she returned home, and they were waiting for her at the door. She was then tortured and beaten, and they took her into the woods, and then one of them raped her. They said to her, if your husband doesn't show up within 20 days, they're going to kill them all. They're going to kill her girls, they're going to kill her husband, and they're going to kill her. When the girls got out of school, she grabbed them, and they ended up running and escaping to Sweden as well. And they were able to keep all of this from the girls. They didn't know about the beatings, the soldiers, the parents, getting beaten by the soldiers, or the rape of their mother. 1.5 years had passed since they fled into Sweden, waiting for their letter to come. They received notification that they finally had answers for them. And so they all got in the car and they went off to the government together. They started speaking, but before they announced the decision, they started with the reasons why they had escaped, the whole story in front of the girls. Remember, the parents, they kept that information from their girls. They didn't want them to know what had happened to them. And here the government sitting there speaking it like they just telling the vacation story. The children, they started crying right away. Now they knew what had actually really happened to their parents. And after telling the girls all of this horrifying things that had happened to their parents, they simply said, your application for asylum has been denied. That's a lot. That is a lot for those girls. This is where the problem actually began for their one daughter. The next day, the teacher called their mom from the school and said, you need to come get here quick. Your daughter's crying. She's telling other kids in the classroom that she's got to be sent back and you're all going to be killed. And now all the kids in the classroom are crying uncontrollably. I got to call the parents. That's the kind of trauma that never leaves a child. Imagine being a 7-year-old child carrying this sentence inside your body. That's just awful. Every breath, every night, every time you close your eyes. Your brain doesn't know how to process that. It just stores it deep. So now the girls, they just know now that protection doesn't come from adults like they thought it would. Then now they know that their bodies can be violated. And now they know that death can be promised. That was the moment that the child shut down. She stopped speaking. She stopped eating. She stopped responding. She slipped into resignation syndrome. Not because she was weak, but because her nervous system had reached its limits. This is not surrender. This is the brain saying, I can't survive this again. The most devastating part is the mother. She watches her daughter lie motionless, and she knows her own trauma lives inside her child. That is what was, that is what was done to her. Didn't end with her. It echoed. The mother doesn't cry loudly, she whispers. She touches her daughter's face and apologizes, as if love alone would wake her up. In the silence, it forces you to sit with it, to feel that weight. For this mother, it's so far been 5 months that her daughter has been in this state. And to feel how long days must feel when your child isn't opening their eyes and their mouths for years. Some go for years, months and years. 3 more months have passed, and they've received news that they were granted asylum. So now they're telling her, come on, wake up, baby. Wake up. We're safe. We don't have to leave. We're here. This is our home. We don't have to go anywhere. They give her ice cream now, and it takes about a minute or 2 for her to actually swallow it. It's a slow process, but she's starting slowly to come out of it. But now she's back in school and doing really well. She doesn't remember anything. She ended up spending over a year total in Resignation Syndrome. There's controversy surrounding this syndrome. Some critics claim that this illness is psychological, that parents are influencing the children, or it's a learned response. It doesn't matter who's right, because what it shows is children who absorb too much fear for too long, children whose nervous system never learned how to turn off survival mode. Here's the part that feels almost cruel. The only known treatment for Resignation Syndrome is hope. Parents appeal and deny and are again waiting for decisions, one after another, after another, after another. Here's another family of 5, 3 children, the oldest being 12. His father worked at a restaurant, and while at work he'd heard people talking about being killed, and things are just getting way out of control. It's just way too serious at this point. And he knows he needed to get his family out into Sweden. So he had to go pick up his son from school, and his friend gave him a ride. Well, once all 3 of them were in the car, some soldiers pulled him over, told the driver to get out, and they just shot him. They just killed him. Well, the man he acted quickly. He just hurt him, grabbed his son, and pulled him out, and they took off running. They escaped into Sweden. By the time they'd gotten there, his 12-year-old son was under so much stress. Just tremendous amount of stress. Because as they're trying to get into Sweden, his son kept looking out the windows of places they were hiding in and staying and seeing things he shouldn't be seeing. And just by the time they reached Sweden, he fell into Resignation Syndrome for 14 months. What happens in these children, they get settled into a new school. They learn to speak Sweden. They make friends. They start to let their guard down and think that they're safe. Then the decision comes and they're denied. They're denied asylum. And the children can't manage that mentally. When families are granted asylum, when stability is restored, when fear finally ends, some children wake up slowly, painfully. They relearn how to sit, they relearn how to eat, and they relearn how to speak. But many don't, and no one can predict who will. Resignation syndrome, it's about what prolonged fear does to the human mind. What happens when safety is promised, then revoked. How systems designed to protect can still destroy. And most of all, it's about the children who were never given the chance to feel safe long enough to grow. They are now having the same withdrawal symptoms in children over in Australia refugee detention centers. It's just starting to happen all over. I'm scared before you know it's going to be here in America. The horror isn't what you see. The horror isn't in the hospital beds. It's in the realization that the body can shut down to survive, that a child's brain can decide that this world is just too dangerous to stay awake in, and chosen to sleep instead. If this podcast stays with you, it's because there's no closure. There's no triumph ending. Just the understanding that this is still happening right now, somewhere. Children lying still, waiting. Not for medicine, but for mercy. Trauma doesn't end when the war stops. Sometimes that's when it just begins. There's a documentary on this. You can watch it on Netflix. It's called Life Overtakes Me. It's very interesting. You might want to watch it. Well, I'm Tina, and you've been listening to the Black Rabbit Podcast. Down the hole you went. There's always another one waiting. Make sure you subscribe for more haunting deep dives. And if you do watch the documentary on Netflix, please come back here and leave your thoughts in the comments. I'd really like to hear them or read them. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and don't ever ignore the quiet cries. Bye-bye.